Hey guys, welcome back to another Gaming Memories video. Here we are taking a look at a Japanese racing title by the name of C1 Circuit that was released in Japan only back in 1996. Now this is more of a budget style racing game that was released on the system back at that time. And you'll see why it's a budget type title once you actually see the graphics and the gameplay. Although a lot of these earlier titles on the PlayStation did have these type of graphics for the most part, but this was definitely more of kind of like the low end of a lot of the type of racing games or even visual games on the system at that time. But they were still very appealing in their own right for obvious reasons, because even though the game itself, there's not much information around it based online, but from what I have been able to find and even from playing it myself, the game is actually a decent enough game, although graphically it wouldn't be as good as some other games that were out around the same time. The game is flawed to its own degree with the graphics, and then there's a lot of kind of like draw distance, there's a lot of clipping on the backgrounds. Even the car models themselves don't look as visually appealing compared to other games on the system. But the game, once you get into it, is actually a decent game. It does take a bit of a while to get used to the game mechanics and the physics and how the game actually plays out. But I found myself actually, once I got into this game myself, actually haven't played it for a while, I actually found myself actually getting quite addicted to it. And I'll be honest, because I'm a big fan of racing games anyway, and I always believe that it is worthwhile actually giving a game a chance to see actually how it gets on. And I was pleasantly surprised by this game. Again, right, it is flawed, it does have its glitches as you can see on the screen. The tracks are very narrow, but when you get familiar with the handling characteristics of the cars, especially like here I'm driving a Honda Civic for the most part, and I found that after a while playing it, after a few races, I started to get a really good feel for the game. And even though the tracks are narrow, you can really push the car to its limit and you can really take corners with ease once you get more familiar. And obviously you have to avoid traffic and so forth as well, so there is a lot of things to be aware of. But I really am drawn to, even though the graphics are not as good, I'm just drawn to these visual style of games. I just love these old school classic games. Even though they're visually not as good, for me that doesn't matter. It's how the game makes you feel when you're actually playing it. And the thing is with this game, like I mentioned, the more I played it, the more I started to get into it. Again, the game is difficult for the most part. It does present a good challenge, but like I said, once you get familiar with it, and especially if you can get through the early parts of the game and overcome the little niggles and hurdles that you'll face, you'll find you'll actually get through the campaigns with relative ease to some degree. Now the game itself, like most games of this time period or this era, generally only have about 3 tracks available, but they're all intertwined into one big large track, but they all open up into like more difficult areas the further into the game that you actually get. And also you have a selection of very popular cars from that time period. Like you have everything from like the Honda Civic, you have the Toyota MR2, even the Nissan Silvia, the S14 Silvia, and you have a load of other cars that are there. But the game is also broken down into different tiers. You start off with the basic low level tier, and then gradually as you go through the campaign you will find that you'll unlock different tiers. There's like 3 different types of tiers in total, and with each tier you will get access to a different set of cars, more faster cars. Now you can still race and get through most of the game with your standard car that you usually start off with. And even though the races do be quite long to some extent, but you've only got really one rival on the track at any one time, even though you do have to dodge a lot of other traffic on the roads and so forth, but you've always got one rival that you actually have to beat in order to progress with each race. Some of them you will be able to do it easy enough. Other races I found as I played through it, especially when you're racing against certain types of cars, you find that it actually will take you quite a few tries to have one good run at the race. But that's just typical of these old school games. You find as well, because of the glitches too, that the likes of the computer controlled car as well can be hit and miss, because sometimes it can actually drive through walls or drive through other traffic and cars with ease and it doesn't even affect it at all, or other times it can hit it and actually slow it down, so it gives you an advantage moving forward. But again, that's just hit and miss. But a lot of these games were like that back in the day. A lot of these games were released and they were actually published with a lot of these flaws. and they weren't like not what we have today, where we can update games and fix all the bugs and flaws. Back then there was none of that. If the game was published as that, that's what you got pretty much, and that's what you had to pretty much live with. Like, it's not a groundbreaking game by any means. It's very simplistic, like I mentioned. There's not really an awful lot to it. Like, there's no story or any kind of emphasis on one. It's literally just your typical race. So you just get in from the start and you just race and keep winning races until you complete the game. And the game will take you a little while, obviously depending on your skill set and with a little bit of luck as well, to get through it. But in fairness, I actually really enjoyed it from having actually played it, even though it is difficult at times, and there's times when it probably can drive you mad for the most part. Most people probably wouldn't like this, and they might even just look the other way, but I actually found it to be quite enjoyable. And if you're into similar type of games, again, I do be into these type of games, especially with the likes of nighttime driving and games that are based on the likes of Japanese kind of environments, like with roads and likes of motorways and stuff. If that's something that you're into, this game will provide it in spades, and you will actually have a good bit of fun with it. Again, it is relatively short, like I said, but if this is something that you're into, I'd recommend that you actually give it a try and see what you think for yourself. Because again, like, I'm actually finding the more I'm exploring a lot of these type of games that were released in Japan, there's actually so many racing games that were released on the system that we didn't get in Europe or even in America. So now is a perfect time to explore a lot of these games, although some of them wouldn't be as good as others, but they're still worth actually having a go in my opinion, and this is actually one of them. So I highly recommend, if you're into looking for something a little bit different, a bit quirky, even though it's flawed, this game will actually provide a bit of fun for a while, and I do recommend that you actually go and try it out, and even just to see what it's actually like and compare it to other games that you may have played on the system. You never know, you might actually enjoy it like I did. So I do recommend that you actually give it a go. And I'd love to know your thoughts on this game, and if you've actually have played it yourself, and if so, what do you actually think of it? Did you enjoy it, or maybe not so much? Make sure to drop it down in the comments below. So if you'd like to see more of these type of videos on the channel where I share gameplay and reviews of other style of racing games that were released in Japan on the PlayStation 1, then make sure to leave a like on the video. Also be sure to subscribe to the channel, and again, hit that bell icon to be updated whenever future videos are released. Also be sure to check out some of the videos here on screen where I do provide other reviews and gameplay videos of other similar games that were released within that region on the PS1. So as always, make sure to keep playing those classic games and enjoying them, and keep those gaming memories alive.